Welcome back to the Dear Global Leader solo format for a new episode number 6. And today we'll discuss a topic that is central in the global business, which is the resiliency of the global supply chain. It's really a topic that I really enjoy because I studied it, but also because I feel that it's the skeleton of the company. So if you're able to understand how the global supply chain works, but also if you can understand the strategy of different type of supply chain, it's also a type of mirror of a strategy of a company. And of course, I'm pretty sure that in the coming series, there will be also a topic about the supply chain because it's that vast and that's interesting that there will be a new episode coming. But today we will discuss about the resilience of the global supply chain. And to do so, I took one study case that I guess a lot of you have been pressured around, looking back at the past episode. And this was in March 2021. The Ever Given ship were blocked in the Suez Canal. Yes, you may remember. During 6 days, it completely freezed and paralyzed the global business. And we will analyze this failure, but also what are the takeaways for the global supply chain leaders. So at that time, it was cars, it was coffee, it was oil that were blocked for multiple days. And what was the impact? Nearly 9 billion goods of worth of goods delay per day. So it was really not just an accident of the global supply chain. It was a global wake-up call for a lot of us to realize how can I gain efficiency but with resiliency at the global scale. Let's start by, as I really like the numbers and a bit of context. So the containerization business is about 90% of the containers move by sea. So it's really huge. And the Suez Canal hosts 12% of the global trade, and it's about 50 big ships per day. And at the time of the incident, it was 400 ships that queued, one after the other, because we accumulated 6 days, and about 60,000 containers that were completely blocked. So we completely paralyzed one of the most important global flow arteries of the world. And here it really makes emerge a vulnerability and the weakness of the global supply chain. At that time, we wanted to go global, we wanted to move the maximum of goods at the time, and we optimize for efficiency. And then we forgot a bit about the mix of the resiliency. What we will analyze first as the first pillar is the structural weaknesses. So the Suez Canal, such as the Panama Canal, is a small node, but that has the role of a global dependency. This is the case in other industries, such as the Taiwan semiconductor factories. If this type of small nodes got paralyzed or froze, it's multiple industries that depends on them, on this small node of the global supply chain that is completely under trouble. And this was the best example that happened with the Suez Canal. But something else of these structural weaknesses is that when you're in the supply chain, you have always different options for, transports. You have small, medium, large options. And here with the Ever Given, they went with the large options. So 20,000 or more containers on one ship. This is, of course, amazing in terms of cost. You can reduce cost and go very efficient, but it magnifies the failure. And when this happened, it was a huge risk, and it completely blocked a lot of these prices because they couldn't get access to the products. Hand in hand, the globalization created point of concentration, and point of concentration creates vulnerabilities and fragilities. And this is what we're put in highlights by this situation. The second pillar that I will analyze is the risk management system that is completely crucial to any type of supply chain management. If I look at the consequences of this incident, you of course had the direct losses and the delay of the goods, but you also have the commodities shocks. As I mentioned, there were a lot of like product that we need to get assimilated every day. And if I take the case of the oil, it was an increase of 4% on the oil price. And as we all know, when the oil price goes up, it's a lot of consequences in terms of inflation. So this was first big consequences. Another consequences is that a lot of components for a lot of industries were carried by these containers, and this was the case for automotive or electronic companies that were completely, they had to completely stop the production because they didn't have access to the component. And lastly, we don't often talk about the second ripple effect. We often think of there is an incident in the supply chain, we need to scrap or we need to delay, and this is a direct cost to handle. But the supply chain effect usually have after months second ripple effect, and this is what happened in this situation. There were delay and shocks in the retails, but also there were increase of cost a bit everywhere in a lot of industries. So it's really crucial for the leaders of the supply chain to have a risk management strategy for absorbing this type of incident of the global supply chain. And the last point that I want to discuss is really this balance between resilience and efficiency. And the best example was these study cases. What a lot of companies did afterwards is having a better control of the visibility and the redundancy. For example, Maersk decided to do a digital supply chain visibility system for them to better track the supply chain. Or Amazon decided to take care of all the part of their supply chain in-house. And this helped them to mitigate some of these dependency risks. But in general, the best strategy or the best de-risking strategy is to increase your mix of route in the supply chain, but also of suppliers, because then you will decrease your dependency risks and increase the diversity of your flexibility and options. And this is what the winner of the global supply chain resilience looks like, is really controlling the risks of the supply chain by diversification and visibility. So what are the takeaways of this episode? Because a lot of us were confronted to this specific situation, and a lot of us had to rethink of our supply chain, rethink of our resiliency. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you already implemented by now some of your strategies. So it will be interesting if you have some insight to share it with us in the comments to help grow the community and also share the best practices. But regarding the general takeaways of this situation on these questions, number one will be map your choke points. It's really important that you figure it out. What are your weaknesses point, the point that may become in time of crisis a bottleneck, and that will cost you a lot. Secondly, you need to find a good mix between controlling the visibility and the dependency. It will cost you short term for sure to put all of this diversity in place and maybe regionalization, but you will win on the long term, especially when new crises will come, such as, for example, lately the one of the tariff. You will be able to absorb some of this ripple effect faster and move back to resiliency your supply chain faster. And coming back to this, we need to mention that efficiency without resilience create vulnerability. And this will be the last point, is you need to really find the balance and you need to make sure to have a de-risk strategy in place for your supply chain. So to all of the leaders of the supply chain, is really key to not see the supply chain, delivery, operational topics such as a cost element, but really a strategic, resilient element for your company. What I really like about the description of this study case is that we can see how much the global business is an interconnection business. We are all very dependent on a lot of different type of component and industry, and at the end of the day, our strengths is as strong as the weakest point of our supply chain. And I think this is something we need to reflect on. And this will be maybe my last question to you is, do you truly have visibility over these one or two shock points of your supply chain? And do you have really thought of a redundancy strategy or a de-risk strategy in terms of crisis or shaking point? I really enjoy making this episode, as you always know. So if you also love the episode, feel free to give me a good rating on the platform. Send it to some of your peers at the beginning of the episode if it was something someone else has experienced, or if it's something you want to spark a discussion, feel free to share it with your colleagues. And as always, don't forget to subscribe or send it to interesting new colleagues. And I see you in the next episode. Bye.